Welcome, friends, to this newest episode of the Fake Nerd Podcast Book Club, where with great power comes great responsibility. I am your host, or one of the hosts, Ben Magnet, and I am joined by my bros with the Fake Nerd Podcast, Brandon T. McClure.
Hello.
Sparks Witty.
I just watched Brandon react to the word podcast in the title there, and I'm like, I mean, it's in the logo. It's in the logo. So
it is what it is.
It is. And Ryan Eliopoulos.
Clone. We're all clones. Clones.
Okay, we'll get into it. But when I read that like the SpongeBob bald. Anyways, but yes, this is my pick for the newest edition of the Fake Nerd Book Club, and I picked Miles Morales: The Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1 Revival, which is written by Brian Michael Bendis. It is inked by Sara Pichelli, Mark Brooks, Andrew Hennessey, David Marquez, David Lafuente. The colorist
They're the artists.
They're the artists, excuse me. The colorist is Justin Ponser, and letter is BC Corey Petit.
Let's just talk that artist thing real quick, because not all those artists are really on all these
That's
issues.
for one issue.
For Spider-Man 200, what it is that David Lafuente, Sara Pichelli, Mark Brooks, and Mark Bagley and Andrew Hennessey, they're all on those like sequences where people are wondering what would Peter Parker's life be like, because that issue is in this volume. It is issue 200 of Ultimate Spider-Man before this change really happened. The last like 30-ish issues are with Miles, but it's still just called Ultimate Spider-Man. But like there was all this retitling. When you get to the end of issue 200, you can see all the separate series and everything.
It's kind of like a sending
off.
So
this was like a celebration.
Yeah.
But Dave Marquez is the majority of the art.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And fantastic art, by the way, too. But guys, a little bit backstory of why I picked this book. As if you've been listening to the Fake Nerd Podcast for a while, I have finally not only played but beaten Spider-Man Miles Morales on the PlayStation 5. I've been in a Miles Morales mood. On Netflix into the Spider.
Who had the end of 2023 in bets? Brandon, that's you, right? We owe you all the money.
No, I had 2024.
Oh shit, that's right. I think you just thought.
I was TBD.
Really? You guys took bets on when I would finish Miles Morales?
No, that's why that bit was so clunky.
I'm glad you finished it, though.
But yeah, I've been on a Miles Morales kick, because of course early in the year, Across the Spider-Verse, fantastic film, and I've been wanting more Miles Morales. So I'm like, let's go with the Miles. There's like a bunch of Miles Morales books. I essentially threw a dart, and this is what we got. And I will say, I want more. I really do. This was back in the heyday when Bendis was still really, I'm not going to say that Bendis isn't good, but back when Bendis I felt was like almost to his peak, or at least around his peak, maybe, if I'm wrong, Sparks, because I know you read a lot more Bendis than I have.
I'd say this is more like the beginning of the sunset.
Okay.
Yeah. My history with this goes deep. We'll get into it. In hindsight, I probably should have guided you to a different volume.
I tried to.
Okay.
Yeah. I tried to, and we'll get into it.
Damn.
Because this is not
a good jumping on point.
It's not really a story about Miles as much as I think what you were looking for.
Yeah.
Like this is very steeply a story about Peter in this universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think, look, I haven't read as much Ultimate Spider-Man as Sparks or Ryan has. I did read quite a lot of it, and I actually ended up reading this entire volume as it was coming out in print, because I was working at the comic book store at the time. It's very easy, just like, I have downtime, just read this issue. So I ended up reading this entire run up until the thing, and I read a lot of the Peter Parker stuff. I read some of the post ultimatum stuff, but I think this might be Bendis's worst decision, bringing back Peter Parker.
Yeah.
I forgot. I was hoping like there was going to be like the twist, and that it wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I want to like, we can talk about our history, because I also read all Ultimate Spider-Man. And of course, it's been a long time, so like my memory's not great on it. It's it's been over a decade. But I was reading this as it was coming out. Like Brandon, I was working at the comic shop at the time, because now we're old enough. We're like, it's almost like 10 years ago. Yeah. So rereading this, after now, and this isn't a humble brag, like having read all of Miles Morales Spider-Man up to current, because he hasn't had that many. He's had books, but not that many. Like
Not as many
as like Spider-Man with like thousands.
Yeah.
Like Miles has like maybe like 100 comics, and like that's not that much. I do wish you would have picked the one that I recommended, the newest, the Cody Ziegler run from the modern era, because it is a Miles Morales book written by a black man. It's a Miles Morales book where he has his own villains. It's a Miles Morales book that actually feels unique. He has like an electric sword. It's very like shonen inspired. But we're not talking about that book. We're talking about this book. But this book, I think it fails Miles because it is so Peter centric, including his villains and all the side characters. It doesn't allow Miles to really breathe as a full character.
I think the weird thing about this is because this is like labeled as like, it's a new launch and it puts Miles' name in the title of the comic, and it is more steeped in Peter's world than all of the previous issues in the Ultimate Run that involved Miles had been post like the immediate aftermath of Peter dying. Like all of that was about Miles's family. All of that was about everything going on with him and his world, and introducing Genki and establishing them, and him meeting Katie and all that stuff. And that's his world. And then they title this as a Miles Morales comic series now, and immediately it's very much centered around the orbit of Peter Parker, which is just so weird in like looking back on. And I didn't
think about it at the time.
At the time, I was put off by. I think Bendis got too wrapped up in knowing the Ultimate Universe was coming to an end. It's alluded to in one of the issues here, like everyone.
The first issue.
Knows, the
first issue.
Everyone knows that the universe is about to come to an end. And so I think Bendis decided he wanted to swan song the world of Spider-Man he created rather than Miles. And you could chalk that up to him knowing Miles would live on past it. So he didn't feel like he needed to do that for Miles. But it does make it so like this last year of comics with Miles is very much not about him in the way that it should be.
Now, does Bendis write the series? Yeah, that's the guy in the Miss Marvel.
So real quick, this is a Bendis tradition in all of his comics. It's not the multiverse stuff, but guys getting arrested and yelling about nonsense. Like that is a staple in all of Bendis comics. Also, Bendis is in this comic. If you notice, he's one of the detective guys, which is also something that happens a lot, which is really funny. Sorry, Brandon.
Well, I was thinking that like Bendis writes the series that immediately follows this right after Secret Wars, doesn't he?
Yeah, I got him to sign my copy of it.
Yeah, so like, I think at that point he knew that he could still continue Miles' story, but not in the Ultimate Universe. And I don't hate the idea of bringing back the Green Goblin. Actually,
no, I don't either.
I think that's pretty cool. Like Miles having to face the Green Goblin, but also bringing back Peter really hamstrings Miles' storyline to just being, now this is all I'm doing is freaking out that Peter Parker is alive. And that's really it. And that's such a disservice to this character. And it's so weird because that's not how Bendis was writing him up until this point.
Well, and so many of these issues, just to your point, so many of these issues have to be filled with Peter Parker supporting characters in a way that, again, the previous like 20 or so issues had not been.
It's like all of Miles's like build up was kind of washed away just to return. It's maybe because Bendis knew this universe was ending, so he wanted to give Peter Parker like a better ending. But like,
I think
he had a good ending.
Yeah,
like him dying is like, it's a sad ending, but that is an ending.
Remind me, Ben, because I forget. I know we've talked about it a lot, but you've not read where Peter Parker died.
No, I was thinking about picking that because I wanted to know, what happened. All I knew was that Peter Parker died. That's all I knew.
Yeah. That's an incredible comic, and I would love for us to do it one day because that thing and Fallout, which is the story that comes Fallout. Right after, which really introduces Miles, because like the death of Peter Parker is all about Peter, and then Fallout
I was
is like everybody else in Miles. Go ahead, Ben.
Damn it, I was this close to picking Fallout too because I was thinking about it. I was like, nah, I should. Damn it, I should have done that.
The thing is, no. To be fair, I would have told you if we're doing Fallout, we kind of have to do the death first.
Yeah.
They go as a pair. You kind of need both for context. That's why I've kind of shied away from it in the past. But it's such the point I wanted to make to you is it's a comic that I've gone back to a lot. It makes me cry all the time because I was so in love with this iteration of the character and the comic world that surrounded him. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful ending. And because, again, this is the Ultimate Universe, a lot of characters die in the Ultimate Universe.
And they can stay dead.
Yeah.
And they can stay dead. But they're not generally as powerful and emotional as the death of Peter Parker. There are a couple in the Ultimate Universe that are pretty high up there, but none that hit quite as hard as this did.
Yeah.
The decision to reverse it always bothered me.
I was
just awful.
Now that you told me that this, because I didn't read past issue 5. I wanted to, but did not, because I was the whole time thinking this is a clone. This is a clone of Peter Parker, but he's tricked into thinking he's the real one.
He could be. It's open-ended. He has all of Peter's memories, and the first person he sought out was Mary Jane, and they went and checked Peter's grave. This is like literally the issue after this volume.
Yeah.
And there's no body there, but that could mean a lot of things.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's him.
That could mean that someone else took his body for experiments or to clone.
He wakes up on a cold slab in a science lab, so like it could be a clone or it could be his body. Like,
but an abandoned one, so
ambiguous.
He can't ask anyone any questions. So he could be a clone that has all of Peter's memories and is ostensibly Peter, or he could be the real Peter alive because Norman is alive.
Right. That's the big thing that this comic is trying to kind of make you think, is that because Norman even says in this comic to Jonah that like perhaps it's the Goblin formula that created the three of us, the two Spider-Mans and me, that is keeping us, that we're immortal now.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the clue to them being to him being the real Peter Parker, but there's also the ambiguousness of it could be a clone, but it's not really. I think the intention at the end of the series was that it's not supposed to matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do think that's it. And I think it was a way. I ultimately think what it is that Bendis wanted to give Mary Jane and Peter a happy ending.
Yeah.
Because their stories pretty well thought out and woven through. I really like. There's a lot of things I do like in this comic. We're kind of talking about like the garbage that went on in context around it. And while I will say like fundamentally the Peter Parker coming back part of the story bothers me and always has, because why only 2 years later undo such a perfect emotional passing?
I really wonder if editorial was involved at all.
Could be,
even though the line was ending.
Yeah. That's the thing is like knowing the end is coming. I do feel like he just decided he wanted to do a better wrap up on, and it could have been something where he might not have done this for years longer.
Yeah.
And it was something he was thinking about doing. And there might've been like a longer window than 2 years before Peter came back into the field.
Yeah.
Either way, that's the decision that bothers me. But what I was going to say is Mary Jane has that moment where she's talking to Miles when he's asking about telling Katie the truth. And she says, it's kind of like asking her to marry you.
Yeah.
And like, you're bonded for life. The moment he told me that secret, like, you kind of can't go back from that. And like, you are connected. And like, even though Peter and Mary Jane were not always romantically together in the Ultimate Universe, she was always a major factor in play because of that. And like, I think arguably more well executed than like, you're comparing a lot of years here, but like a general average of how they interwove Mary Jane without it being about romance.
Certainly in the modern era.
In the modern.
Because I literally just read like 100 issues of Spider-Man from 2000, 2007, and that's the best shit they've ever done. But that is, again, almost 20 years old, 15 years at this point, right?
Yeah, but Bendis had a good stance on keeping Mary Jane a good friend to Peter, despite romantic shit getting in the way of the two of them.
Yeah. I think this comic has a lot of really great moments. Yeah. Like I don't love it as a whole, but Bendis is like, when he's really popping, like he's really funny. And like the stuff with Jonah and the Goblin, I really like that Jonah just flat out shoots him. And like, you know, maybe I could be a different person. I don't do no, dude, I'm gonna kill you. Like, Jonah.
Jonah actually going to issue 200 just because I want to talk about some of the interactions.
Right.
Jonah pulling up to May's house and not able to go inside, I thought was so good. I really like everything they do with Jameson. Pretty much post-Ultimatum, Jameson becomes a far more interesting character in the Bendis universe. They do things with him that they'll just never do in main Marvel. And you get a lot of that here, which I really like about this volume. You get a lot of like Jameson's not the same Jameson he's been.
I thought I took a picture, but I guess it didn't. There's a line where it's gone. Where he's sitting behind the very first news that are told of Spider-Man's a menace, and he's like, I only want the truth from now on. He's like, I know it's behind me, but I'm a Jane person.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to. Since we started talking about Jameson, I actually wanted to highlight that scene for a bit because that was actually one of my favorite scenes in this whole book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
is how Jameson, in the very short amount of time, because we all know the stereotype of J. Jonah Jameson, that he hates Spider-Man no matter what universe. He hates Spider-Man, and in your brain it'll always be J.K. Simmons or a guy who sounds almost like J.K. Simmons.
Yeah.
And the whole bit about get the story, I want the story, and everyone's just silent. He just goes, I know it's behind me, shut it. It's just hilarious and how Jonah has changed.
Yeah. This Jameson is probably the reason why I don't like the MCU Jameson. Because I don't like the Alex Jones-ness of the MCU Jameson, who's very much like right-wing conservative. I hate Spider-Man. But like this is the kind of Jameson that I really like to read.
I'll tell you, Ben, just because I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it before, maybe off podcast, but we're never going to read this comic for the show because it's not a good comic overall. But there's a thing called Ultimatum that happens in the Ultimate Universe.
Killed everybody.
And Magneto sends a giant wave that drowns New York. The important thing about that for the Spider-Man characters is that's where Jameson changes, because Jameson is in one of the buildings that's being submerged, and he watches Spider-Man diving into the water over and over again to get civilians out and nearly dying. And he sees it with his own eyes. Like he's watching it happen as New York is struggling. And Jameson fundamentally goes, I'm a bad person. I've been wrong the whole time. Our city is suffering and he's right there. And like it changes Jameson. And he has a changed relationship with Peter's Spider-Man for the next like 2 or 3 years that Peter's still alive in the series. Mm-hmm. And it changes his dynamic. And then, of course, get to Peter passing, he publicly learns that was a 15, 16-year-old kid being Spider-Man that he was picking on. And so all of that gets even worse, even after he started to change the way he talked about him. So it's a really great arc that you're getting to kind of the end of here with Jameson, like really championing truth, feeling this guilt. I think what's beautiful about it, though, is that May recognizes that about him because he couldn't have been driving to that party without an invitation from her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's so great about it is May's like, I know how much you care about him now.
Yeah.
And Jameson, he still has that. It's the guilt. It's the years of guilt. He still, even though he was better in the last like 2 years of Peter's life,
there's a lot of negativity. Yeah. That issue 200, I think that is a good issue. It's just everybody remembering, especially having so many different artists. It's basically like they're at a Peter Parker memorial. Like it's been 2 years, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna celebrate his life." And all the friends show up, and all the superheroes, and it's like, "What do you think he would have been if he was still alive?" And like, "Oh, we'd be the Ultimates," and like, "Oh, he'd be part of the Spider Police," and like all those different splash pages were beautiful, dude. Like all the top-notch Spider-Man artists are on this book, celebrating Spider-Man.
They're all the people who have worked on the Ultimate Spider-Man comic up to this point.
Yeah,
and they kind of get to like showcase their eras more or less in the art style.
I forgot Mark Brooks was a part of this, and like he's so good.
The Kitty Pryde one is one of my favorites.
I love the Kitty Pryde one because she can't talk about it, and like Kitty Pryde and Peter is another thing that I really like that like Ultimate Marvel gives us, because they date for a while.
Yeah.
And like Peter is like intermingling with the X-Men a while because of it, and the X-Men are like judging Kitty for doing it, and it lasts for a long time, even as they're not talking to each other, that Kitty still loves Peter. She has never met another person that she loved as much as she loved Peter.
Although she's going to give Bongo or whatever his name is second try. Kong looks like. I don't remember that guy at all. My memory's so bad.
That's the whole thing, is that like for her, she tries to date other people, just never really got past her still really loving who Peter was.
There's a great line, and like one of the people say, but it's like, if Peter got to live in like 10, 15 years, he would be the one. He would be the biggest superhero. That was Mary Jane, and like he could be like, he would be the best of all of us.
But she's also saying it because that's what Nick Fury says, which is also really excellent. That's in Fallout. Nick Fury comes to Mary Jane and he's crying, and he's like, when I roped him in, I wanted him to be the best. I thought he was going to be the guy, like he had the best spirit of us. And I find that so
That was what was so great about the Ultimate Spider-Man line, was that it was so clear that like he had the potential to be the best hero. Like bar none. And like that was kind of what Bendis was saying about Spider-Man just in general, that he is like the best superhero out there. But because Ultimate line didn't have the same restrictions editorially that the rest of the Spider-Man line had, it was actually a possibility that this could happen, that this Spider-Man could grow up and lead the Ultimates, and he could be the best, even better than Captain America. He could be the best of them, and then he was taken from them, and it becomes such a tragedy. It's a really great, it's a really solid like way to write your character, write your Peter Parker.
I want to tell Ben a fun fact, because Ben, Gwen Stacy's in this book. She gets featured pretty well. Would you like to know what Gwen Stacy is at this current time?
Yeah, I would.
So earlier in the run, Carnage kills Gwen Stacy, and then Carnage kind of like has a mind wipe situation on a piece of itself that reassimilates as Gwen Stacy with all of her memories. So Gwen is dead. That is a Carnage incarnation that just remembers its whole life as being Gwen Stacy.
There's like this iconic page from one of the Ultimate Spider-Man issues where like it's like Carnage Gwen, and it's just like horrifying. And it's like it's this thing trying to be this teenage girl, and I'm like, yo, man, that's what I forgot it.
Arguably, like the first place where they started, Marvel in general started playing with like Gwen as a superhero thing, because she kind of like starts mixing her Carnage powers, trying to be like Peter, and then decides that that's just too destructive for her, so she stops using her powers altogether.
I want to highlight the art real quick. David,
hold up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Carnage Gwen. Yeah.
So Genki made out with Carnage?
Genki made out with an iteration of Carnage that believes it's Gwen Stacy, yes.
I mean, when I was reading this, I just thought, cool, Gwen Stacy's not dead in this version. That's in this universe. No. I was okay with that. I mean, I was going to give all the props to Genki about essentially him wooing Gwen Stacy with whatever Lego set he built.
Older lady, too.
Yeah. I mean, to as the kids would say, he got the Riz.
Did you watch all of Heroes, Ben?
All of Heroes? Not all of it.
Okay, but I think at the end of season 3, they kill Nathan Petrelli. Sorry, spoilers for the old show.
Yeah.
And
I remember that
they reprogram Siler's brain to think that he's Nathan.
Oh yeah.
What a show.
That's essentially what happened with Gwen.
Okay. Wow.
What a show.
I'm kind of glad I stopped watching.
Sometimes things should end.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you try to write a show during a writer's strike.
No, I just remember
that was season 3. That was post writer's strike.
I know, but the fallout from the season 2, man.
Sure.
The ultimate fallout.
Yeah.
I just remember a lot of times Siler was trying to be like, I'm your brother. I'm not your brother. I am your brother. I'm not your brother. You know that. Anyways, we're not talking about Heroes.
No. I love the Carnage. I love the Carnage Gwen factoid, because like you're so deeply far away from it that none of the characters are ever going to reference it again.
But yeah, it's like not only that, but also Genki, like the issue 1, he's not talking to Gwen anymore. It's like, dude, she literally she kissed you twice, gave you her number, call her.
It's this, they happen like close to each other, but like it feels like there was just like a cutoff. Like we're not going to think about what kind of happened in the past. Like we're just going to do more. Like it's like it's like a weird disconnect. Like immediately reading it.
Yeah,
but it also is like. It also is immediately important because they do reference it, and Peter was outside at the very end.
Yes,
you get that like shot of someone in the bushes.
It's a creeper.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell?
Remind me, 200 comes out after Galactus attacks the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and then the relaunch happened.
Cataclysm.
Yeah, Galactus shows up in Cataclysm, and then there's basically like right after Cataclysm, it's like, hey, so behind the scenes, you got like a year to wrap up the Ultimate Universe, so get on it. And so all the people are like, oh, neat, okay.
And it doesn't feel like anyone was even prepared when Secret Wars happens. Like they were told they need to wrap it up, but it doesn't feel like anyone did.
What's so funny is if you look at the cover like if you look at the issue 12 cover, it's time runs out 1 month until Secret Wars. A lot of books had those titles, but they had it for 6 months. Miles had it for 1 month. So it feels like they had, like, he wrote 11 issues. And he's like, oh shit, I have to wrap this story up. And that's what it feels like if you read this whole book.
If I remember correctly, like the very last story in the Ultimate Universe before they dip into Secret Wars is all about the Maker helping Sue deliver her and Ben Grimm's baby.
Oh God.
Because Miles Morhamis shows up and says that any world where Simeon Storm and Dr. Doom get together is a bad world.
What I love comic books sometimes.
I'll never forget Miles Morhamis.
Yeah.
Galactopus. Ultimate
I'll never forget Galactopus.
So David Marquez, incredible shit. His Goblin is so good.
Justin
Ponder on colors. Rest in peace, Justin Ponder. He passed away. Incredible book. Bendis and Marquez would go on to work on many more titles after this. They did Iron Man together. They did Invincible Iron Man. They did International. He did Civil War 2. Not a good book. Boy, that book looks good though. Holy shit. When you get a premier artist on an event book, that turns from like a 10 to like an 11. But David Marquez's art is so good. I just wish this happens with Bendis sometimes. When he writes a lot of characters, especially young characters, they start to sound very similar. And one of the problems I have with this book is sometimes it just feels like two teenagers talking, but none of them really have a real personality. It's Quip Central. And like, I feel that sometimes when it's with Genki and Miles, it's unfortunate because again, like it's taken like almost like 10 years of Miles Morales to get a person of color to write him and to give him like more like authentic flair than a white guy trying to write a black person.
Credit where credit's due. Like, Bendis had to do it for the character to
No, of course.
Like,
he also created Riri Williams. Like, I'm not bashing the man.
No.
Like,
no. I know you're not. But like, it is one of those things where like, there was no opportunity for someone of color to create a character like that in that space. It wasn't going to happen.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so like that's cool. It would have been even cooler if Bendis had, as Brandon pointed out, to like Bendis carrying on when he goes into the main Marvel universe. If Bendis had said, I really think maybe someone of color should write the character now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I like Miles in this book. I don't find him to have a strong, like unique personality. He kind of sounds just like a young teenager. And I guess maybe because like, not all young teenagers are fully developed, but I feel like when all the teens are talking, they all sound very similar to me. And it is a problem Bendis sometimes has with teen books.
This is the problem when Bendis went to do Legion of Superheroes that I had, because he very much, when he first started writing the Spider-Man, he was much closer to teenagers at the time. I'm not saying he was like, I'm sure he was like 30 something, maybe even 40.
No, but he was our age.
He knew how teenagers sounded, but as he continued, he got further and further away from it. And so when he was writing Miles, it kind of still was, he kind of got away with it a bit more because he originated Miles. And so it was still kind of the voice that you were familiar with Miles. But it was still, by that point, he shouldn't have been doing this anymore. And when he went to do Legion of Superheroes, I had this problem. I had the same problem that like every one of these characters sounds exactly the same. They all sound like a teenager from 20 years ago, not a teenager from today. And like, none of this is working for me.
And sorry.
And Sparks is absolutely correct. Like once Secret Wars happened, Bendis, he went on to do Iron Man. He should have said, all right, I'm not going to write Miles anymore. This was my Miles Swan song. I'm good.
And I think he writes a great Tony. I think like there's a lot of great characterization. Like I think his Norman is really spooky and good. I love the way his Norman is. His J. Jonah Jameson's great. Maria Hill being like a fun detective. Like Miles, get in the car. I know who you are, bro. And like that's great. I love that. It's just like after a while, I want to identify more with these characters. Like who are you uniquely? And I feel like a lot of the teenagers, like y'all are teenagers. Like I don't feel like Miles really gets his own personality until like the movies. And then the comics after.
A pretty good example, and like you can feel the disparity that's happened if you've read it in Bendis's writing, is that when you're in issue 200, Ben, you get Bobby and Johnny,
the Flame Boys,
and
Thank you.
I couldn't think of it.
And you got Firebird, Firestar is there too.
Firestar.
So for a while, like a whole period, I think a whole year in comics, Bobby and Johnny both were living with Peter. And because of different like Bobby rebelling against the X-Men and Johnny rebelling against the FF. And like I think the FF had completely fallen apart at that point. Like nobody knew where Reed was and thought he was dead.
He's making shit
at that point in time. And so they're living with Peter, and Bobby and Johnny felt dynamically different in that run. Here at issue 200, if I didn't visually see them, I didn't know which one of them was talking. Or someone didn't say something explicitly like Bobby or like you were in the X-Men or something like that.
Yep.
One of the not like the flashbacks. I was on this page for a while because I wanted to highlight it, but I'll switch to a different thing. They're talking about this page, where it's like, oh yeah, Peter was still gonna kick ass. I'm like, I don't know who's talking. Who is this?
That's Bobby.
I'm asking you, who is this?
Yeah, it's Bobby and Torch could have been interchangeable with their totally.
Is this Bobby?
Yeah, it's Bobby.
Okay, thank you. Because
he goes to write the new X-Men too, when he brings the original 5 teenagers back, and Bendis wrote like that. He wrote X-Men for a couple years. That book I like a lot. Also, they sound very similar, and like it happens.
And so like I really like, I'll highlight the page because I think when he's funny, I think when Bendis is funny, he's very funny. Like don't get hit by a car immediately, almost gets hit by a car.
Almost gets hit.
But also like when there's just like when Firestar, Human Torch, and Iceman are going and they all meet up, and he's like, there's too much fire on either side of me, and I'm gonna whoop. And I think like that's really just like, I'm okay. I think that's really funny, and it's cool that it's a cool like we got Spider-Man and his amazing friends in kind of the ultimate way and in the original way because we have Firestar and Human Torch. I think that's all really good. But like if they're not on fire or on ice, I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Frozen when Bobby is ice surfing, he has 2 fire heroes next to him and he just like falls down.
Yeah.
There's we have 2 villains who are like Spider-Man villains. They nothing happens with those characters in the next volume really. Like as far as I just read it and I don't even remember their outcome. I'm like they feel like he had an idea and then he's like, I gotta wrap this up because like the next volume deals a lot with his dad. Spoilers, like a lot with his dad, and that stuff's really good. I really like the King, like it involves Kingpin and Shield, but it like takes away from the overall story and then it immediately ends because of Secret Wars. So it's really it's a really messy second volume.
Yeah,
I would definitely say those 2 robbing Spider-Man. I completely forgot. Like once Norman entered the picture and not Clone Peter entered the picture, I completely forgot about the other 2. Whereas I would say they were more of a detriment to the book. And also hearing you guys talk, because I won't lie, when I first read this last night or this morning, I was enjoying it. I was engaged. I had fun reading this book. I liked it and made me want more Miles Morales Spider-Man. But hearing you guys talk about it, I was like, oh, is my taste bad or something?
No. Don't ever.
I think you have just like you have less context as well. So like jumping in and like I think it's a good book. It's just
Let me, because that was quite triggering to me, Ben.
Sorry.
Not because like I also suffer from the same problem when we're on here and I start thinking, oh, is my taste bad? I never ever want you to think that. I'm telling you right now, Ben. I'm going to tell you the same thing that I always wish that someone would tell me and I would listen to, because I get told it often and I never listen. Never ever think that your taste is bad. If you like it, you like it. Context be damned. If you like it, you like it. This is a book that you like. I want you to own it. I want you to love it. Whatever I have to say about it, because maybe I have context or maybe because my taste is different, has nothing to do with your taste. If you like this book, I want you right now. Ben. 5 minutes. Right now, I'll time you.
That's a lot of minutes.
What do you like about this book? Tell me about it all. I want what you liked about this book.
5 minutes is too long. Just go as long as you can.
I don't give a shit. Right now, Ben. How much time?
Okay.
How much time you want? I want you to tell me why you like it.
Okay, sure. First of all, the easiest thing that I love about this book is obviously the art. The art is fantastic. Even like 200 and even going on to the other issues, it is fantastic art. It is absolutely gorgeous. Because one of the things I did remember when I was a kid, I had 3 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man. I don't know how I got those issues in my possession. I just had them. And it was such a different feel to the other Spider-Man books that I would remember seeing on the shelves, or the Spider-Man cartoon that I grew up loving. And to me, this felt like this takes place in the Ultimate Universe. So the art, obviously, I love it. It is great. It is great comic book art.
Absolutely agree with that.
I really like the relationships that Miles has with all the different people in Peter's life, i.e., Mary Jane, Aunt May, even like when Gwen Stacy for a hot second, just like him talking to him was like, look, I never knew Peter, but you guys all accepted me and into this family. And even his scene, I know we've been mentioning 200 a lot, but it is part of the book. And I really loved issue 200. I thought issue 200 was a great way of not just saying goodbye to Peter, but remembering Peter and then trying to shift the focus on Miles. I mean, of course, yeah, we have this whole thing of Peter coming back, which now with more context in it, I do agree with Sparks that it should have been more of a Miles book than a Peter book. But it did make me miss Peter. And also, one things I love about with comic books, especially, is when you read one thing, you want to read other stuff. And like this one, I know we've read Ultimate Comics before. We've Sparks picked it as a book club a long time ago.
Oh yeah, long time.
Long time ago. But there's just this flair with early Brian Michael Bendis and early Ultimate Comics that just makes me really enjoy it. And I love how things are different, but they're the same, parallel universes and all that jazz. And I also, it is Quip Central, but I do love the quips. Like when Miles finally gets the courage to tell Katie that he's Spider-Man, and Genki is like, don't, yes, no, I'm doing it. No, don't you dare. It's like this great little back and forth. And then when Katie realizes that, yes, she has that breakdown, but also I really like the conversation she has with her sister. It's like, and then her sister's like, oh shit, you need to break up with him right now. And even like a little.
Is the Hydra stuff in this volume, or is it the next volume?
It's the next volume.
Next volume, I think.
Got it.
Yeah. So, contextually, the Hail Hydra thing is also kind of like oh, okay.
Yeah. So, spoilers for the next volume. She's part of Hydra.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it's weird. It's
okay.
It's really weird.
Huh.
It makes that conversation with her sister make more sense because her sister's like, "Oh, we got to kill him." As like a joke. It's not a joke.
I think what Ben is saying, Ben's got some great points, by the way, but there's a lot to actually like in this volume. And I thought none of what we were saying was to invalidate any of that. This does feel like, well, yes, this is kind of the sunset of Bendis's kind of heyday. There is kind of a sense of like, oh, that's right. When Bendis was good, he was good, because you still see Bendis in this. The way he writes dialogue in the dialogue boxes and the phrases of the dialogue boxes has always been really smooth, and like it's always been really like punchy, and in a way that was really refreshing. That got old, admittedly, but like it was still kind of reading this like, you know what? No one really did anything like this at the time, and really doesn't do it like this now. Not a lot of people, anyway. And
Bendis
it's really kind of fun to hear.
Yeah, Bendis isn't afraid to have a shit ton of dialogue on a page.
Yeah,
and like as long as it's good. Like again, I'll read a book. That's why I love Hickman. He puts little data pages in his comic books. Like if it's good, I'll read it. And like Bendis, if he needs to have like a huge conversation that's more about the words than the actual art, he'll do that because like and most of the time it works.
Yeah. One other thing I want to give praise to issue 200 for is when Pepper Potts shows up and she has like the whole carry thing, and everyone, and they're all like, all this food by this famous chef, and Genki's all like, but I like the papaya hot dogs.
Yeah, that was cute.
But then when they're talking about what I do love is how this book just still brings the spirit of Peter Parker to life, and they're all talking like, I feel like we need to do something good. We need to do something nice. And then they look around because Aunt May is like, I have way too much food. I don't know what's going on. It was a small group of people. What the hell? And then they go to a homeless shelter and they give the food to the homeless. And it's a really, to me, it's like, yeah, they have way too much food. And it's like, what can we do with this? This is something good we can do. We could donate it to the ultimate version of Feast. We can take, and you see this lady giving Miles a bear hug, because I can only assume that's like a proper meal she's had in a week or so. And it's a really good emotional scene. And even when everyone's parting ways, and it was just a really good start to this Miles Morales story. And even when Peter does show, because I do agree, the focus does shift from Miles to Peter. And the more I think about it now, this is kind of a more of a Peter book than a Miles book, which I wish it was the other way around. But when Miles meets Peter and he's just like, what the F? And Peter goes, language. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious. And even when Miles goes, clone, it's like clone.
There's so much cloning in the Ultimate Universe. Oh my god, it's so funny. And
he talks about Jessica Drews, the Black Widow. She's a clone of Spider-Man.
I forgot that she's Black Widow in this universe, and it brought me back. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, Black Widow is part of the Spider Squad. Hell yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I forgot she doesn't go by Spider-Woman.
Yeah,
she takes over the Black Widow mantle after Black Widow dies. Long after, I think, actually.
I wanted to also mention something that Ben also brought up, which is that Miles' relationship with Peter's supporting family is really good. I really like the scene that when Miles texts Mary Jane and goes to meet her and like when she's off work for a minute.
It scares her.
It scares her. It's really funny. And to talk about like when did Peter tell you? And like Miles, it was really nice of Miles to have that kind of support system to kind of prevent him from doing this, from being a Peter Parker clone, so he didn't do the same mistakes that Peter Parker would do, because he had that supporting cast to be like, how did Peter handle this? How would I handle this? And to kind of like, and to have the supporting cast be like, you're your own Spider-Man. Be that. And I really that does come through in this book, and I really like that.
It's important, I think, to point out too that like I think Bendis has done the most interesting stuff with the concept of when someone knows Peter Parker's identity and how that affects the relationship. That just isn't stuff that happens in main Marvel. And like, if you're going to keep up secret identity shit, like Bendis, both with Peter and Miles, he really thinks about like, how does this affect this individual relationship? Like, nobody reacts to the information the same. It doesn't like just move things over this unilaterally. Like, it's always a shift. And like, notably, it was always a surprising thing, because in the very first collection of issues, so the first volume of Ultimate Spider-Man, the very beginning, Peter tells MJ almost immediately, like, it's in that first volume. He tells her very early. They're not even dating yet. They're just friends. And he tells her. And
that's trust.
And I think like, yeah, they're best friends, but like, it's wild. It's a big shift. And it changes the dynamic of what you watch them do for the rest of the series. And I think Miles weighing that also, and like the concept of, I don't want to be like, at a certain point you're a bad person. Like, obviously there's like, you gotta trust a person before you tell them something that important, but like at a certain point you become a bad person.
Yeah. I think he took that to with Superman. Didn't quite work as well.
Oh sure, yeah.
But I also want to say I agree with what Ryan said a little bit ago. It's a little while ago now, but I really love his Goblin, Norman Osborn. I think is really good.
He's terrifying.
Yeah, he's really terrifying. Like when he's in that devil form, and he's like, what does he say? He says, and like when not Maria Hill, it's this other, it's Shield, not Shield, but you know, it's
Monica Chang.
When she's about to be killed, and like they're after him, and Norman is just like, you let me slip through your fingers, and I have no pity for you, as he transforms, and like, oh Jesus. And the art is incredible.
Yeah, and I love that Norman's just walking around nude when he's not the Goblin. Yeah. Like, can I just go a robe? Jameson,
he's like, oh, I don't get cold, but if it makes me more comfortable, sure. He's like, are we on the record? It's like, oh, Jonah, I think we all know we're on the record. He's like, all right, cool, sweet. And just like when he pulls out the gun and shoots him, I was like, oh,
baller. It's a baller move.
It is a good move.
Shout outs. This is probably the origin of immortal Hulk stuff. Hulk can never die, because you know, Goblin in this universe is one step away from Hulk. Everything was created in the same like attempts to recreate Steve.
Yep,
that's the concept here. So all the same scientists were working in the same like labs, just trying slightly different things. One creates the Hulk, one creates Venom, and the other creates the spiders that create Spider-Man and Goblin.
I like that for this universe. I'm glad Marvel, like the MC, the 616, and like let's try to merge everything.
Yeah,
like, not everything has to be connected.
Yeah.
Only it can work once really well.
because the early MCU stuff took a lot from the Ultimates universe. That's why Hulk was created out of the Super Soldier program also.
Which I think is really cool. And like, I think it was a cool, like, when you are doing this different interpretation for Ultimate Spider-Man, because Green Goblin is one of the early villains for Spider-Man in this iteration, I believe, Volume 2. They wanted to make it distinct. And the way that they went for this, like, rage giant monster that's very Hulk-like, but got its own thing going on, that's because he was like one experiment dose away from being the Hulk for Osborn, and like that's literally what's on the page, and that's why it's so close.
Oh, he's like a big Hulk man. He also catches fire. What happens when the Red Hulk gets too angry? He also gets really hot.
Yeah,
and I'm like, yeah, this is they're thinking, they're kind of thinking together a little bit. Harrison Ford himself.
I really like the stuff of the Venom Blast brings Norman kind of back to center. Which he rarely gets to anymore.
I killed my son. Like, oh no.
And like, yeah, you after a certain point in the story where he killed Harry, Norman kind of gives himself to the Goblin to never have to remember the fact that he killed his son.
Yeah.
I know I criticized I criticized Peter being back a lot, and I probably forever will. However, the scene when he shows up in the battle with Norman and everyone sees it is very good.
That's a hype page.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Norman, like, I can let a lot of things slide, but you keep beating up the president of my fan club. I'm going to have to beat the ugly off you. And by the looks of you, it's going to take all night.
Yeah.
And I really like real quickly, sorry, Ben, I just want to highlight, like, there's so many like great moments of just like shock, like J. Jonah Jameson kind of like, what the hell? I also really love Ben Ulrich just driving like, what?
Yeah.
Because
in that same
Goblin looks so good.
Yeah, dude, he absolutely does. Marquez and Ponder together, like, kill it. Yeah, in that same fight, like when Peter's there and all the cops are surrounding him, he's like, here's another idea. Put the guns away and everyone back up and go home, and I don't know, go to bed. And it's like, that's just really silly. Going to a Goblin line, I really like when he's talking to Miles and he's like, are you here to devote yourself to me or to him? What? I helped birth you into this world. Daddy? Oh, smart mouth, I see. Say no more. You're a disciple of Peter Parker. Then allow me to give you the full Peter Parker package as he's about to kick his ass. I'm like, that's good. That's some good shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I just love how when they're about to fight Goblin together for the first time for Miles Morales Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man, he's like, "You took my web shooters. They're my web shooters. No, they were a present. Aunt May gave them to me."
Yeah.
Just like constantly fighting back about who has the web shooters and Miles.
The interplay. The interplay is good, honestly. Like I like the way that Bendis writes the two of them. It is really interesting that this is actually the second time that Miles has met Peter Parker, because Spider-Man had already come out by this point, and it's referenced in this book that he had met the Peter Parker of the 616 timeline. And so like having him be like the first thing he thinks about isn't clone. It's, oh, are you from another parallel dimension? Yeah. This would be the first time.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's, I think, another thing that in the grander scheme like undercut the return of Peter Parker, because
it's not even
that Peter like from our main universe goes around and encounters all these people living in the aftermath of the death of their Peter Parker, and like Aunt May and everything, and you do all that shit going through that with those characters, and it's like, we don't need Peter Parker back when we've done a story like this.
Yeah.
They all got to tell that Peter about what that Peter meant to them.
Man, like, that Spider-Man book is good.
Yeah, it's a good book. You don't need this Peter Parker revival when you had them kind of have a closure-esque moment with meeting Peter from another universe. And like, what would he have grown up to be? Oh, he kind of would have been this guy.
Yeah. Can't pay his bills.
I don't like the Bugman crying thing either, because it really doesn't add anything to the story, but I do like the paneling.
Oh yeah.
Yes. A lot of the art stuff in this book in general is really good, and that one in particular.
They just fizzle out in this book. Like, there's no real conclusion.
All it really feels like it's there for is to put Peter and Miles in trouble with the police immediately when they show up, because for some reason cops can't tell the difference in those two costumes.
Yeah.
Everyone's labeling them as the Spider-Man, and I'm like, they're like Bugmen.
They don't look the same.
They look like they look like Kamen Rider. Like,
they look more like Ant-Man or Kamen Rider. Absolutely.
If I may, Sparks, when I was reading that, and they're like, "Oh, it might be these Spider-Man, they're doing crimes together." It's like, why does this feel a lot like Sonic Adventure 2 when they're like, "Oh, it's Sonic"? It's like, that's Shadow. That's red
But
and black.
One is
That's
blue
not
and the other one's
Sonic.
carrying a gun.
Yeah.
That's the difference. One is blue and the other is carrying a gun.
Well, I didn't want to say black. It's not racist. Sega's racist.
That's true.
Anyway, something I wanted to look. We can all acknowledge, like, choices were made. They weren't good ones.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things. So something Bendis does really well, that I think works really well, and they don't need distinct voices. They're bit characters. They're there for like 1 or 2 pages at most. I don't need them to feel like they're all like these distinct characters and everything. So he kind of reuses like a lot of personalities of how he'll do this kind of thing. But I love characters like this, which is the security guy who had been monitoring Norman Osborn and then signs him over. And he's like, well, since I no longer work for this, I can tell him exactly what I think of him killing Peter Parker. Punches him right in the face.
Yes. I really like. Wait,
Congratulations.
You're taking this off my hands?
You now own 1 Norman Osborn. Good luck.
Make sure
to keep him on his meds.
Make sure you keep him on his meds. You won't like him off his meds.
Yeah. Yeah. So when everyone was talking about it, I was like, "Oh, is Norman Osborn dead?" I do apologize for constantly referencing other comic books when stuff like this comes to mind. But like when they see Norman Osborn, like they're like, "I thought he died." He's like, "Nah, he didn't die. He's that." And he's just like, locked up, chained, and he can't move.
Because it's a big reveal, right? It's like, because at this point Norman hasn't been in this book, and everyone thought he died when Spider-Man died, and then all of a sudden he's alive. Like, you reveal Norman's alive before you reveal Peter's alive, and actually that's a really effective reveal. And I wish it was just that. I wish it was just Norman was alive.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
anyway, to get back to my analogy, it was like when they found out Doomsday was still alive after he killed Superman.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
Not to say that he's stealing from DC Comics, because it's a very common trope that you think the villain's gone, but then a few issues later it's like, no, he's not dead, and comic book tropes. But there is a similar trajectory, actually. Just to give you a little bit of credit there. There's a similar trajectory of the death and return of Superman. The timeline of Superman's return and Peter Parker's return in the Ultimate Universe is very different. And they didn't intend to keep Superman dead when they did kill him. But like it is kind of a similar trajectory of like, this big climactic battle killed the greatest superhero of the world and its most formidable villain. And then the reveal that both of them are actually alive is there's a parallel there. I would not be surprised if there was inspiration there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just like the whole Norman Osborn bit, like when he's saying "you're gonna burn," it's just very like
you're gonna burn.
It's very shorthanded, because I can only imagine he can't move his mouth because he's locked up but I do like that. Drugged, and I really like how that security guard. He's like, "I'm no longer a deputized member of S.H.I.E.L.D." Smack.
My favorite panel is the middle one of the first page, where he's just like, now he's your responsibility, and he's just excited, like he's really happy. He's like, I don't have to do this anymore.
It's like this guy who just got off this horrific job got off the worst shift at work, and he's like, he's like flipping him off as he's walking away.
What I also think Bendis does really well, and to my memory, this is throughout the tenure that he writes Miles, he's very good at thinking about all of Miles' new abilities that make him different from Peter. The Venom Blast, the invisibility, he utilizes them well. He thinks about them a lot. He's always trying to figure out, like, would Miles use this in this scenario? Like, what can Miles do to get out of this? Oh, he has these abilities. He needs to think about at least trying to use them, if not using them outright. And I think Bendis does a really good job of incorporating them.
Yeah, and it was so smart to not just make him another Spider-Man, to give another power set, because now we've seen in Spider-Man 2, the game, he's like a nuclear bomb at this point. You played Miles Morales, Ben. You see the shit he can do in that game. He's a walking nuke, right? He's like more powerful than Peter at this point. And in the comics, that dude is now channeling it into swords, into like Thunder Fist, and like he's really become a dude. I'm telling you, this new run's freaking dope.
And
I think I know what my next book club is then.
Well, the other thing is that he didn't have web shooters in the beginning. Like the first couple of issues, I think for a little while, honestly,
I think he couldn't the first volume.
He couldn't swing, and so like that was like because he didn't have the web fluid, and
he hadn't met and talked to Aunt May yet.
Yeah, and I think that was really smart of Bendis to start this Spider-Man with a new power set without the ability to swing. To bounce off what you're talking about, Sparks. One thing that I really like is that jolt that he gives Norman at the end there. Hold on, what was this line? What was this line when he hits him with the mailbox? That is for Peter Parker. But he taps him on the ankle, and Peter's like, "That was a good tap you gave him, Miles."
Wait for it.
Yeah, nice little poke you gave him there.
Wait for it.
Yeah.
I love a good wait for it. I love it.
And I really like the face that Norman makes in the bottom panel, just the.
Yeah,
it's like
Marquez has great facial expressions. Like you always know what the people are feeling or thinking.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think ultimately, I don't. It's not. It's. I think we all started this book club pretty harsh, and only because like at this time it was a misstep to bring back Peter Parker, but there's good stuff in this book. In this volume specifically, there's a lot of great character interactions. Miles is still a fun character to read. The artwork is incredible as always, as Brian has been shouting out forever, as he should. David Marquez is an incredible artist. There's stuff to like in this volume. It's just not as reader friendly to be like this. If I want to read a Miles Morales book, where do I go? It's not this one.
That's the thing. This is the first solo Miles book, and it's not even barely about him. And that's just like, I think this is a well-made book. I think it's just a misguided book.
Yeah. And I think it's misguided from like a lot of angles, whether it's the focus on Peter Parker or the fact that like
the premature ending,
the impending like ending of the Ultimate Universe that meant like maybe we just should have gone a different way about all of this to begin with.
Yeah.
It's more just in the context of the grander Ultimate Spider-Man story. There's a lot better jumping in points. There's a lot better arcs that aren't so bogged down by like many different factors that are coming at this one. Doesn't change the fact that it is still good. Like Bendis still knows how to treat this world and these characters overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
We haven't really gotten into it as much, but the very ending of this volume with Jameson and Norman, very Fall of the House of Usher. Are we on the record? I think we are. And Jameson getting to the point, he's like, so you're not done fighting, you're going to keep going. And he's like, of course, and not until every last one of them burns my mind. And Norman's looking up and sees the gun, shock and shot.
Yeah. And it's so, again, that art page is so good because Jameson and Norman both have so many different facial expressions and they're all so readable.
And again, going back to like that Jameson arc, which I really love, he's been carrying this weight about what he put Peter through and ultimately feels like he had nothing to do with Peter's death. I'll tell you that. But he feels like he did. And he feels partially responsible, even though it had nothing to do with him. And so he bringing that to this table and he's like, this is the person that killed Peter Parker. I won't let this go on. And shooting him. Really, really effective.
Absolutely.
Turn for Jameson. Just not where again, the kind of thing you're not going to get in the main Marvel universe is a in bathrobes confrontation between Jameson and Norman where Jameson shoots him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't even think they have bathrobes in 616.
That's so true. They only have sonic showers. They don't need them.
Stay tuned for that joke to pay off, I guess.
It already did.
Is it the episode that's out already?
Yeah.
That's fun. All right. Anything else you guys want to bring up?
No, I think this is a well-made book, but again, like if you want to read Miles Morales, just jump into the modern stuff. I think this is bogged down by like, especially if you haven't read the Ultimate Universe.
Or if you want to go back to like when Miles was created, you have to do the death of Peter Parker, the fallout, and the stuff that comes right after.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's if you want to see Miles' creation,
you gotta do the homework.
You gotta go there.
Yeah.
If you want to just find a good jump on point for Miles, do it in the modern Marvel era, where he's in the main world.
Yeah.
Don't go back here. Don't go back here unless you're willing to invest.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll do it. Ben?
We'll definitely. I don't know when. It's not going to be the next thing I pick, but one day, Ben, we'll do the death of Peter Parker and the fallout, and we'll also do Ultimate 6 because I really like how much you guys like Norman. And let me tell you, that was when Norman went full mask off to the world. He led the Sinister Six to take down the Ultimates and storm the Capitol.
I remember that. I remember that volume.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ben, good pick. Good discussion. Actually went longer than I thought this would. All right. Ryan, it's your turn next time.
Hi, friend.
The next couple of weeks.
It is me. I'm going back to my favorite, not just character, but also one of my favorite writers. We are going to explore the many lives of Dr. Doom. And we're going to read Christopher Cantwell's and Salvador Roca's and Guru EFX's Dr. Doom miniseries. Now, here's the thing. This is a green screen, so that's why it's doing this. This is a 10-issue miniseries. So I am asking you to read 10 issues. But we have weeks to do it. So please don't wait to the last minute if you don't think you can do it. 10 issues is not that different from 6 issues, really. I didn't want to do half the volume because just like this book, I think like this Miles Morales book, like you really need to read all of it to like, I think it leaves you in a bad spot with volume 1. So it's 10 issues. It's a full complete story. It is my favorite. Like it's like the best modern Doctor Doom shit in the world. There's like Kang stuff. With the MCU, how it is like Kang might be replaced with Doctor Doom. And there are ways you can really easily mix that together and make it work over the next couple of years. And this is one book that kind of tackles it. So Doctor Doom, I love it. Christopher Cantwell can't do any wrong.
Now, is the 10 issues collected in one volume or is it collected in 2 volumes?
I assume it's collected in 2 volumes, but like I don't want you to read half a story because it is.
Absolutely.
It's only 10 issues.
I was just curious because we normally like just promote these as volumes. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It is
right,
the complete. They sell a complete series too. So
well then there you go.
Also, real quick, sorry, if you want to buy this Miles Morales entire run, it is on sale on Amazon for like $15, and you get a bunch of Ultimate issues. You get Ultimate 200, and you get 1 through 12 of this volume for like $15. So if you want to get this book on Amazon and get all of it, it's really cheap.
Nice.
We are not sponsored by Amazon, but that's a good deal.
Nope. Yeah.
All right. That'll do it, guys. Stay tuned for the next time. The next, should I? Well, yeah. In the coming weeks, be on the lookout for Wasted Space Volume 5. That'll be in the next couple of weeks for sure to kind of finally wrap up that book, which we are very excited to do because that's a pretty good book. Make sure to go back if you haven't already to listen to the episodes we've done of that already.
True.
All right, so that'll do it, guys. So guys, the strike's over for now. We'll see. But we are starting to release some of the things that we have withheld for the strike. So be sure to go to fakenerdpodcast.com to see what all that is and what's kind of coming around, where you can find it all. Subscription links, all that can be found on that website. Fake Nerds Watch, Fake Nerds Cinephiles, Animation Stations, which I don't think we actually held any Animation Stations, and all the like. Just stay tuned for a bunch of stuff that's probably going to come out. Unless they go back on strike, in which case we hold it again.
We're actually going to remove episodes.
Can you imagine? Just start removing things. And so, yeah, of course, you can also check out our Patreon and a TeePublic if you'd like to support us financially. I greatly appreciate all that support. That's all on our website or linked below. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Fiction Podcast. I'm a BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. I also write for AtomicGeekdom.com. Ben, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me at BenMagnet27 on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads. And they can also find me writing for Old School Gamer Magazine, Fusion Gaming Magazine, GoNintendo.com, and playing Mary Frankenstein in D and Dark.
Sparks?
You can find me editing away at Sparks Witty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZ Witty.
And Ryan?
You can find me whipping around at the speed of sound at DJ Tony Snark all over the internet.
I'm surprised how well that works.
Subscribe to us on your podcatcher of choice, rate and review wherever you get us. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. Until next time you see us, guys, stay fake nerds.